Good morning.
We're live. There we go. Good morning. Is it one of these that it rains, it pours kind of mornings? Is that what it is?
Wait, is it raining and pouring? Yes, it is.
Well,
oh, my goodness. So I feel like I'm the deer in the headlights today. So we're hoping I can hold it together through the whole podcast.
There we go. Welcome to the farm.
I know. Oh yeah. No, yes, for sure. So good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
All right. So before we get started with Wendi, because this is going to be a pretty, we've got several people watching already this morning. And I think it's because, people are pretty interested in election integrity issues.
Definitely.
And, I think that we certainly don't have the problems that maybe New York State does. But I think pretending that, red Oklahoma doesn't have any problems is also probably not the way to go. And so I did want to say this before we get started, a couple of things. So over the weekend, I looked at the new rules that are going to be reviewed by the Oklahoma State Board of Education in February. And there are 18 or 19 rules. I mean, there are quite a number of them that were put out. And so I reviewed all of those over the weekend, and some of them are dreadful. I mean, like seriously dreadful. The DEI rule, which does pretty much matches Governor Stitt's executive order on DEI, and both of them do nothing to really stop DEI in Oklahoma public education, even in colleges. So I think that needs to be really addressed. And we have a problem with the new St. Isidore Catholic School coming on board as an online school. I mean, right now there's a lawsuit to prevent that, but still in all, with that as a possibility, there are new rules that allow private school parents to make complaints about federal programs. So why would a private school need federal funding.
Yeah.
So this is something we really need to look into. And then another thing, and this is going to dovetail totally with what we're talking with Wendi about today. In last year, I believe it was June, the Oklahoma County Republican Party chair appointed Cheryl Williams and I as the Oklahoma County Election Board member and me as the alternate Oklahoma County Election Board member.
For the Republican side?
Say again?
That specifically on the Republican side? If there's a co-part on the Democratic side?
Yes, sir. It's a 3-person board.
Yeah.
3-person board, the secretary of the Oklahoma County Election Board, the Democrat, and the Republican. That's all the board entails. And so as soon as I was able to, I started going to all of the meetings. Cheryl's been going to them, since she was appointed. And we found some significant issues. And I put my observations, wrote them all down because they've actually been reported to the Oklahoma State Election Board Chairman, Paul Xerax, or Secretary. And those are on our website as well. Just my observations. And that's basically the title of the piece. And I urge people to go and look at, what I've seen and what Cheryl's seen, because there are issues that need to be addressed. And I think we'll talk more about these as we get Wendi on. But I do think it's important for us not to bury it's important to do 2 things. It's important to not just accept everything that our elected officials tell us. But then on the other hand, it's not, our job isn't to push back on everything our elected officials tell us. So going on the internet and saying inflammatory things about our election process, I don't think helps anything. It just doesn't. I mean, when you make nasty comments about certain people, that's not helpful. What we need to do is just get to the facts. We don't need to be inflammatory about anything. We just need to have facts. So that's what we're hoping to present today with Wendi. And I'm going to bring Wendi in if Wendi's ready. Good morning, Wendi.
Good morning. It's great to see you, Jenny. Hi, Michael.
Hi.
Great to see you too. And apparently we have kind of similar issues. You have a washing machine that's going now?
So, yes.
I have a stove. I haven't had a stove or cooked. The whole thing is broken. So I haven't had that. Won't have it for about a week. And water running in the wall of, my mom's house. So, I mean.
Right. It's been a month, I think. It's been a month.
It's been a month.
It hasn't even been a few days. I think it's been a month. Yeah.
Well, and unfortunately, sadly, it's been quite a number of years since 2020.
Right.
And I think there were numerous of us that were, very concerned about our elections after that particular election.
Correct.
And you tell us a little bit about your background, because you're kind of a fascinating person. Tell us a little bit about your background and then how you got involved. And then let's jump off in that.
Well, thank you, Jenny, for saying I'm fascinating. I kind of figure I'm basically your average person out here. I'm a mom. I'm a geologist. I've volunteered in public schools for many years. I'm now certified to teach earth science in the state of Oklahoma. It's an alternative certification, but I substitute teach in the schools. And here I am just going about my business in 2020. Got a kid that plays baseball. And sure enough, we had the 2020 election and everybody watched all of that mess unfold. And so I started asking questions. I thought, well, what's going on here in Oklahoma? if this is going on across the country, we have these issues in Arizona, that's a red state. Well, we need to make sure that Oklahoma's elections are okay. So I just kind of started to get into that, thinking that that's what I would find, that Oklahoma's elections would be great. They would be run very well, and we didn't have any issues. But unfortunately, that's not what popped up in the data. And so we found all kinds of anomalies. I got with another group that was on Telegram online. There were several administrators of that group, and Comanche County GOP Chair Terry Evans and his wife Amber were in that group. I'm in that group, Ryan Hill, others across the state. So we got together and decided to see what we could see. And sure enough, found issues with the voter rolls, found some issues with the data. So my whole issue is going around the state and informing people of the anomalies, and they continue to happen, by the way. And just call for investigations and for our officials to investigate what we found. And so far, we've not had any luck with that. Nobody's had any luck with that. What we get is pushback saying that our elections are fine in spite of the issues that we bring. There's no, shall we say, interest really in trying to discover and address the issues that we all bring up specifically. And
well, let me stop you right there and,
yes.
and let's deal with a couple of things. First of all,
Sure.
you're pretty stupid, apparently, right? I mean,
right. Yeah.
So when people want to go the science, right? You're an actual scientist. You deal with data. So in other words, let's just bring this home for sure. You're used to dealing with data. This isn't like, you just rolled out of bed one day and went, I mean, you're used to dealing with data. So I think that's a really important point for people to understand. Okay. As a geologist. Okay, then the other thing that I want to point out is, what's the matter with an investigation? Now let's really think on this. Why couldn't we investigate? You would think that somebody would say, if they're saying our elections are 100%, then they would be super happy, wonderfully excited about doing an investigation because it would prove them right. Am I wrong?
100%.
You are right. And in my presentation, when I give it, I bring that up and say it's just curious because it would be very simple to take these data. I call them anomalies, but they're really almost aberrations. And if there's a logical, rational explanation, I want it. I actually am one of those people that I want to be proven wrong. So explain the data to me, explain to me why it looks this way. It should be very simple. The questions that people have, I'm not the only one that has the questions. I've had experts in my audiences, and they can't explain these data aberrations either. So it's very concerning, when you're simply asking if things are all well, good, and great, then we should be able to have an investigation, have a report, have it made public, have the issues addressed, and have them explained. And it shouldn't take, to me, I wouldn't think that it would take that long to actually look into this and have an expert, sit down and say, address point by point, this is why this looks like this. This is why this looks like this. In random elections, there are.
Wait, that sounds like that you're just asking too much. And besides, you're just being ugly. I mean.
Well, and also, Wendi, this isn't just an Oklahoma County issue. This is statewide, correct? This is larger than Oklahoma County.
Correct. It is statewide. I've had people, I've been to Osage County, I've been to Mace County, I've been to larger counties, but I've actually had lawmakers come in, a couple of them, and listen to the presentation, and they go away concerned, but they tell me that they have issues with voter rolls. They go out and do their walk lists, and they are finding all kinds of mistakes. So they don't understand that. They don't understand why it should be that way. They've had questions.
Let me just interject something really fast. So to corroborate what you're saying on numerous levels. So when I was mayor here in Luther, as I was leaving office, we were having an election to increase the tax for a penny, because we just had never done it, and you know, the infrastructure here was terrible. So we asked the attorney, could we at least just send out a letter to people in the town saying that there's going to be an election? You can't tell them how to vote. You can't push them in one direction or another, but we just wanted to say, hey, please note that there is an election coming up. So we got the voter rolls from the Oklahoma County Election Board, and they come on a PDF. So you can't take them out and put them in, use them. I mean, you really have to copy and paste. It's a real thing. They come as a PDF, not as a data limited or unlimited file like you would have in
any other case.
Thank you. Whatever. At any rate, they come like that. So we sent out, and I honestly don't remember how much we sent out because we were doing it on our own dime. And I think so it was expensive. I believe we sent out 700 letters. Of the 700 letters, we got back 120 something. Does that not seem like a fairly high percentage of things coming back?
Yeah.
They came back to our address because there wasn't a person at that address that the Oklahoma County Election Board says there was.
Right.
That kind of, I mean, am I wrong in being concerned about that?
No. As a matter of fact, we find that kind of all over the state. The voter rolls have a lot of addresses that are incorrect. There were in 2021 over 207,000 voter registrations that did not have a registration date. That was very concerning. That's over 200,000 registrations that should have been removed that were invalid. They simply didn't have a registration date. Yes. That's
Wait, 200,000 in the whole state, I'm assuming.
Yes, in the whole state.
But still, how many registered voters do we have?
We have, I believe there's over 1 million.
Yeah, I thought there was 1.5
because it fluctuates all the time.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's a big chunk.
Yeah, that is.
It is. And it's concerning because when you have close elections, depending on what's going on, we have voter registration cards, by the way. I got one in my mail. We got redistricted, right? After the census, everyone got a new voter registration card with your new precinct on it, your new number. But according to Oklahoma County, they had 65,000 of those registration cards returned.
Wow.
So I don't know what happened to those registration cards, if they were destroyed. If not, I got one in my mailbox for someone who had previously lived in my home. And the way the voter registration, the way the voting goes in this state, because you either need your registration card or a driver's license, you don't need both. I could just simply hand that card to someone on the street and say, take this card and go vote in my precinct. And I had multiple people across the state tell me that they also received cards in their mailbox. This is besides the ones that were just returned. So there are voter registration cards out there floating around, and we do not know where they are. And that's a serious problem. We need picture ID at the polls, where not only do you have to have a voter registration card, you must have a photo ID to vote because of this issue. It's very concerning to me.
Well, let me follow up on one other thing that you said, because when you said that you had talked about, and we'll get to the HAVA funds here in just a second, but what I'm trying to do here is set up with my experience and then what you're saying. I'm trying to make sure that people understand that they're overlapping. Yes. So when I submitted a formal complaint about the problems that I was seeing at Oklahoma County, and I submitted a formal complaint to the Oklahoma State Election Board, I received a 2.5-page letter from Secretary Xerox in response to my letter. And basically on every single item, he blew me off. On every single item. I mean, there wasn't ever a time where, it said something like, well, this needs to be looked into, can you help us look into this? There was never a posture of, how can we help you? And I think this is the thing that bothers me the most. We elect these people. They are public servants, and they treat us like this is some kind of an oligarchy, and we're supposed to just go like this and say, whatever you say, sir, it's all fine, sir. And I really object to that, because if you come at it from the perspective of, hey, this is what I'm seeing, and this doesn't jibe with state law, this doesn't jibe with Oklahoma County election rules, what is going on here? If you come at it from that perspective, you would think, just like you said earlier, that somebody, an elected official who is a public servant, would say, the public is concerned. Let's address this issue in some way. And there is a saying, and there's always been a saying out there, that you can tell somebody something horrible so long as you put enough chocolate over it, right? I mean, so long as you say it in the right way, so long as you use the right tone of voice, so long as you can kind of do that kind of thing. These people don't even try. It's not even, there's not a try. There's just a, and you're like, okay.
Well,
the interesting thing about Secretary Xerox is that he's not elected; he's actually appointed.
Yeah.
You're right.
That sometimes I think I don't like to try to guess, intent or anything like that on the part of any official. But it's been puzzling for the past few years with the responses we've gotten. Others have gotten who have been investigating elections in Oklahoma. It's what you say. I personally don't get a response at all. I did receive one because I decided to go the constitutional route of sending a paper, and got a response. That was rather, I was kind of surprised. The tone of it was a little demeaning. So only because with my background and my education, and it's pretty obvious that I understand the Constitution. I understand how to research. I understand. I've had several articles that I published, and one that's actually been published around. I know how to do these things and put things together, and how to write. So it was a little concerning. I laughed when I got the response because at this point, after 3 years, you can't do much other but that, and just hope and pray that people take things seriously and do the right thing. That's all I've ever wanted, was to have things looked into in Oklahoma regarding the elections, and to get answers for things that obviously need an answer. And I'm not the only one asking the question. So it is very concerning sometimes with the silence that comes, or when I call the state election board and I don't get answers to simple things like, why do we have nursing home board officials? How does that work? Is that a law? Is that a rule? How does that have to be done? And then I get told, well, you need to talk to the county about that. You kind of get the runaround, because the state tells you to talk to the county and the county tells you to talk to the state. And it seems like sometimes that there's just no answers forthcoming. And there are a few, but I spoke to someone earlier a couple of weeks ago who called to get information, and the answer she got was, "How did you find that out?" So she's just like, I'm a person that can use the internet, you know? So she got a, how did you find that out? How did you look at it? She said, I looked at my voter history. So she has a problem. She never votes by absentee ballot, yet she is credited with voting in an election with an absentee ballot. She called, she said, how did that happen? This is not correct. And so then basically what she got was, how did you find that out? You know, so it's very,
so wouldn't let me just make sure for the people who are listening.
Sure.
So a right answer, a right answer to that call would have been, oh my gosh, really? Well, let's look into that.
Yeah.
You would think.
Do you see the difference between the answers?
You would think, because it's very concerning when you get online, and it's a concern of mine that any of our records are online with elections. But we've also had a couple people say that their voter registration had been flipped without their knowledge in the servers. The issue is we don't know what's going on, and we don't know if there are things like this going on. I have no reason to doubt what I've been told. People are willing to go on video. I have a video of the person, and she's very credible, who's been given credit for voting in a particular way, which is why the canvassing is so important after elections, to make sure that people are being credited properly for the way that they vote. Everyone can go in and check their voter history, and we always encourage that they do that. On the voter portal.
Well, and I want you to show people, if you can, sure, how to do that.
Sure. I'll drop it in the chat. There is a link that you follow. You go to the Oklahoma State Election site, you get into the voter portal, and you enter in your information, and it will pull up your voter history. It's a very simple process. And then you can look through it and make sure that you've been credited properly. Now,
okay, hold on one second. Let me see if we can't do this on, I don't know if I can do anything in these private tabs.
While you're doing that, Jenny, I want to just corroborate something with Wendi also.
Okay, hold on one second, because I want you to. Tell me again where to go, Wendi.
The Oklahoma State election site.
Sorry, go ahead, Michael. Sorry.
Well, even I want everyone to understand even just how hard it is as a candidate to even get that information, because you said how important it is to canvass, after the fact. Well, as a candidate, I spent a lot of time with Wendi kind of during my race and trying to say, because she was forewarning me, saying, hey, you need to watch this and this, you need to have people here, you need to try to validate this information. Well, we just ran into hurdle after hurdle after hurdle, because we couldn't even get the absentee ballot list for the people in our district. We wanted to contact them early and send them a card, or go after the fact. There was issues with how many absentee ballots were cast in my race, and we wanted to go canvass those. I couldn't even get a list of everyone that had everyone that got even an absentee ballot, so we could just go knock on their door and say, hey, did you vote in? Did you get an absentee ballot? Did you vote in this election? They made it literally impossible for us to even get that list as a candidate, and we should be able to have that.
You should, and I asked for that list for the April 4th election for Oklahoma County. That included the Edmond mayoral race. I was actually given a CD-ROM with the information. The problem is I don't have a removable drive to read that. So the data sometimes comes in a format that makes it difficult for you to access to begin with. So there's multiple issues. Candidates should have, the information should be available publicly to everyone. Now we have an issue where when you go in and look at your local races, when you vote, you'll notice that there's asterisks there. So they won't tell you how you voted. They don't want that information out there. They don't even want you to have that information. And they will tell you it's because one small town in Oklahoma had an issue where one candidate was able to find out who the one person was that
Yes, I
voted by
remember that
absentee
story.
ballot. Okay, so we've got an issue of one small problem that could have been handled at the local level by a DA with existing harassment, or whatever laws. And now all of a sudden we have a statewide law where you can't find out how you even voted or what the credit is for your vote in your local races, which is very concerning to me and very concerning to a lot of folks out there. And it should be, because it seems like the longer we go in time with elections, the more information is hidden from us. No matter what the intent is, it ends up becoming a very serious problem when our elections are supposed to be completely transparent.
All right, let's do this really fast while I've got the thing up. Okay, so this is the Oklahoma State Election Board. All you have to do is type in Oklahoma State Election Board in your search bar, and it comes up. So that's not a hard thing to find. Okay, now what do we do now that we're there, Wendi?
Okay, let me see where you're at now. Go to the voter portal.
Okay.
Hit login. Check that first.
Okay.
I need my reading glasses.
It says Oklahoma Voter Portal, register to vote, and more using the Oklahoma Voter Portal. It says you have to actually, log in here. So is this where you would create the login to find the information that you need?
Well, I don't even think it's create. I think you just click on the Oklahoma Voter Portal there, and you need to just put in your name and date of birth.
Yes.
Yes.
That's it.
Yes.
Thank you, Michael. That is it.
Okay.
I was going to suggest that, but wanted to make sure I didn't, there's a lot of options on the side.
Okay. So I'm going to pull this out for a second and I'm going to log in.
And I think you can literally just put in any search, okay, voter portal, and it goes right to that page that you're on, Jenny.
Right. Okay. Hold on. Let's.
It should. That's usually the
Jenny doesn't want us to know how old she is. She doesn't want to show her date.
I'm 61. I just thought, okay. All right. Okay. All right. Mr. trying to get me at something. Okay. So here's that's me, right? I'm not going to show my voter info on there because I don't want somebody using it. So I want to, I can request an absentee ballot, change my name, change my political affiliation. I don't like doing all of this online. I mean,
exactly.
Change my residence to another county. I don't know where did this all come from?
Wendi, as long as someone has your name and your date of birth, they can come into this portal. Is that?
Exactly. If you have name, date of birth, you can get into the portal. You can get access to the information. You can get someone's voter history. You can change their information. There are all kinds of things that you can do online with people's voting information. And unfortunately, according to a report out of Georgia, there is a study that was done in 2018, where the conclusion was that anything online, like your voter registration, anything like that, is highly susceptible to manipulation, malicious alteration, and anything else. So our information being online, I usually use the analogy of everyone knows that even banks can be hacked online. So any information that we have online is susceptible to manipulation.
But Wendi, I think it's worse. I think it's worse because look at what I just did to get So what are you telling me? That people can't look me up and find out what my birth date is and log into the voter rolls?
Yes, and that's a problem because just your voter information.
I didn't even have to put in an anything. I didn't have to have a password. I didn't have to have anything. I just logged in with my birth date.
Yes, and that is, that's an issue because it asked you, do you want to change this? Do you want to change that? What do you want to do? So anybody can get in and manipulate your information if they have your name and your birth date. That needs to be fixed. My solution to all this, and it's just my opinion, because I have people who love the convenience of everything being online. And when you're telling them, well, all of this information can be changed, or if you get in and check that, it's, I personally want to bring the voter rolls off of digital formats and go back to paper rolls. So that's not a popular opinion, but unfortunately, with what you just pointed out, because of the lack of security with people's information, that is my recommendation, is bring everything back offline when it comes to voter
But people
rolls
are
and voter
so
registration.
lazy, and they will argue with you, Wendy, and they'll go, but I don't want
They
to go
do.
down the Lincoln to the Oklahoma. I don't want to do that. I don't want to. And then they'll throw a big baby fit about it. And then,
Right.
so everybody goes, okay, well, and like you said, if one person complains, then they'll do it for, whatever. But that's ridiculous. I didn't realize I
Right.
could just log in. I guess maybe
Yeah.
I did, but because I've done it before.
Now
But
it
you would
dawns on
literally have to.
everyone.
You would
Yeah.
literally have to advise every single
Right.
voter in this state
Mhm.
to go online every single week or once a month, go check because somebody could use, my mom died last year, right? So
Yeah.
I reported her as deceased, and but all I had to do was report her as deceased. I didn't even have to send in, if I remember correctly, and I may be wrong, I don't remember having to send in her death certificate, but I reported her deceased. And then when I checked on her, she was out of the system, because I did go back and check to make sure she was out. But let's just say somebody dies and they don't report them as deceased. Well, then all you have to do is go in, because they've been reported in the paper. And so their birth date is right there, and you get in and you can vote using that person who has not been reported as deceased, because you did it all online.
And I would suggest that you go back in and make sure she hasn't shown back up.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And that's the constant surveillance that we have to do regarding our data, because they can just put her back in. I tell people you can point and click really quickly and remove things, put them in a separate file, and then point and click and put them right back. Right. So this is one of the reasons why, and I also point this out to people. If you can do this, anybody anywhere in the world can do that and get online. So it's very serious that some of the ways that we are handling our elections end up being national security risks. Just bottom line. That is a huge problem. It's a huge concern. So while we want to think that we can have all the convenience of all of these machines doing things for us, when it comes to things that are very important, voting is the foundation of our republic. So we have to keep it as secure as we can. And if that means taking it all offline, that is actually what I recommend, especially the voter rolls, and keep them at the precinct or the county level for the smaller counties, but for the larger counties like ours, keep them at the precinct level, or somehow have several people maintaining them on paper, and just have that be their job. This is,
But that's not
we
really
have to
a
get serious.
ridiculous that's not really a ridiculous thing to ask.
I don't think it is. I would be willing to do that job myself. Knowing what I know and how important it is. And we aren't the only ones that have concern. Like I said, I just cited a very credible study from the National Academy of Sciences that talks about malicious manipulation of voter rolls and all of our other digital voting data online. So all of it is vulnerable. And as much as we like to think, I know banks have the highest security in the world. The Department of Defense has the highest security in the world. They were
but a
just hacked.
13-year-old kid hacked them in
Yes.
1982.
Yes. Well, yeah. And then we have a movie, right? So yeah, unfortunately, sometimes we have more sophisticated electronics than our government, right? So they have a bunch of old machines. I hear it all the time from people that work for the government. They work on much older systems, I think, and so it's all of this is a concern. Anytime somebody tells me, "Oh, well, it's online; it should be safe. We have cybersecurity." Well, great, but everybody has cybersecurity and we still have hacking. And the elections are important enough as the foundation of our republic that we should all get serious about the fact that it maybe needs to not be so convenient to either register to vote. Now we have online registration, by the way, just so you're aware.
Right. Yes.
And that's a concern. I can't be sure that the person who's typing in this information is and registering to vote is actually the person who owns that information.
No, and
So,
here's the thing. Let's back up again and
yes,
make the point again. It's not even online security protocol,
right.
right? It's not even that. If I don't even have to have a password to get into my voter information, not
And
even a
change it.
password, I don't have to put in my social security number. All I have to do is put in my name and my birth date. That's insanity. That has to be the definition of insanity, because anybody can find anybody's birth date.
Yes, correct. Online, you can get a hold of a lot of information. How many times have you been notified that your information has been compromised by your bank, by any other online place that you patronize, like shops, stores? Constantly get emails that say your data has been breached.
Okay,
So,
well, let's
yes.
I didn't realize this. Sorry. I think I've been
Better
leading
go
you.
another hour, Jenny.
I know. Sorry. I'm sorry. Let's go and talk about HAVA right now, because it's federal funds for elections.
Yes. Help America Vote Act actually is very interesting because the Help America Vote Act simply established a program after the 2000 election, which we all remember sitting there watching, talking about hanging chads ad nauseum. And for months, we didn't know who our president was going to be. So that situation was used to usher in the Help America Vote Act, where the government decided to provide money for states to upgrade their voting systems and get rid of these old punch card systems that were causing problems. Now, it is a voluntary program, and that is what people do not understand about the Help America Vote Act. It is not mandatory. Otherwise, every single state would be availing themselves of this. There are states that don't. Oklahoma is one that does. So we joined with the Help America Vote Act. Now, the problem with that is that our Constitution states that in Article 2, Section 5, that our elections are to be free and fair. And so, as we all know, when you go through and you look at the history of statutes or laws or whatever, when you look at the history of the Oklahoma Constitution and you go back to the definition of the word free when the Constitution was written, it says that that means uninterfered with. The actual definition is not subject to legal constraint of another, unconstrained, having power to follow the dictates of his own will. So if we are taking money from the federal government telling us how to run our elections and what machines to use, and the EAC determining how they're to be tested, our elections are not free. Ergo, they are unconstitutional according to Oklahoma's constitution. And that is a massive problem. If you want to take Help America Vote Act money, you have to amend the state constitution. The legislature cannot simply just pass a law that says we can take this money because we say so. That's a legal problem. So when we talk about rules and statutes and law, the rules have to follow the statutes and the statutes have to follow the Constitution. And that's the hierarchy of things. And unfortunately for Oklahoma, we've got a problem lawfully with the Help America Vote Act with our receipt of that money, and quite frankly, receipt of any money. There were counties in the 2020 election that took CTCL money, which is, as everyone knows, is the Zuckbucks money. That came from outside the state. Any money that comes from outside the state, until we amend the Constitution, if the people choose to do so, would possibly be deemed unconstitutional. So this is something that we have to look at.
Well, Wendy, do we know how much money are we talking about here? Do we even know in any, what the number is?
In 2018, and it's very difficult. Channel 9 did a report on this back in 2018. And in that year, I believe $7 million was obtained.
Yeah, so it's pretty significant amount of money then.
It's a lot of money. The federal government allocated over, what was it, $630 million initially from the outset of HAVA, and they keep, funding this. So it's a lot of money that we're talking about. The election industry is a huge industry with these machines, with the upkeep, with the security, with the data, all of that. So this is all at taxpayer expense. And we are receiving in Oklahoma, at least that year, I think $7 million. Channel 9 asked for a report on the money that was gotten through the state election board for HAVA. And at the time of the printing of that article, they had not received that report yet. I have publicly called for an audit of the state election board, just so that we can know what money's coming in and out, where it's going, so that we know.
Is there an elected official, a rep or a senator who's willing to ask Cindy Byrd for an audit? Because we can't say it. I mean,
right. I do not. We're looking basically to find someone who would do that. It is a concern when you have this much money coming in, just like with any other public office. The people need to know and have an accountability of the funds that are coming in and out. So when the report was not produced for Channel 9, I'm a little concerned about that. I don't know if Channel 9 ever received that report. I would be curious to see if they did and what was contained in it. But I think that they would have put that information out to the public. So
have you done an open records request?
Not for that specifically, no. I do not. My open records requests seem to end up in a black hole or something these days.
Yeah.
So
okay, so it seems to me that right now, anybody who's watching, you need to go to your rep or your senator and or both and ask them to please go to State Auditor Cindy Byrd and ask her to audit the Oklahoma State Election Board, not the county, the Oklahoma State Election Board. That's the only way to get an audit. And if they're not going to be forthcoming on records and information, then that's what needs to happen. So I'm going to ask mine right after we get off of here. I'm going to text him and ask my rep if he will please ask for an audit. And I feel like the more people who do that, the better off we're going to be. So please get on that.
Yes, and I'm going to, we have our precinct meetings for Oklahoma County GOP this Saturday, and I will see my rep there. I met with her a couple of weeks ago. I'm trying to keep her up to date on what's going on. She's very interested in the elections. They're all busy dropping legislation right now. We do have a piece of legislation that is asking all Oklahomans to re-register to vote, because that actually is the most efficient way to clean up our voter rolls. It can be done, and they lay it out very beautifully in that legislation, the way it can be done and not violate any federal statutes. And we do not have to worry about
who's running the legislation.
That is Senator, let me look that up. I believe it's Stewart out of Canadian County is his district. Yes, Jack Stewart.
Yeah, Jack. Yeah. Okay, so do we have a bill number on that yet?
I can get it for you and I can drop it in the chat.
Okay. Yes, we need to do that because that's another thing. I'm trying to make a list of things people need to do.
For
So that
Restore
at the
Liberty, we're getting ready to start a newsletter, and I'm asking our IT guy to follow legislation to get me a list so we can put it in the newsletter for people to follow. We're also
that
partnering with Oklahoma Second Amendment Association to once again challenge and oppose the driver's licenses for illegal immigrants is coming up again. So that's
well,
Senate
maybe
Bill
what we need to
1409.
do is, Wendy, maybe what you need to do is come on, maybe for 15 minutes, once a month or whatever to talk about, just updates, because I do believe that if we don't stay on this, it's not going to go anywhere. And I just want to mention something really quickly, and we'll get back to HAVA. Two things I wanted to mention. Michael and I, and certainly me for 15 years, have complained about federal funds in public education. Why? Because they force education at schools to do things to get the money that we shouldn't have to deal with on a local level. So federal funding of anything other than defense and interstate commerce being just roads and that kind of thing never should happen. Anything that should not be happening. It's what you just said. It's an interference in local communities. And we simply can't have that. Then the other thing that I wanted to mention too was when I first started as an alternate on the Oklahoma County Election Board, so last year, I was told that I had to go to a training. So I attended the training with Cheryl and I sat there, but I had all these questions. And when I ask questions, it really looks to me like they've never heard a question before in their life. Well, nobody's ever asked me this question before. Nobody's ever even asked me a question before. And I think that's the big problem that we have, because having been a mayor and sat in a whole lot of meetings, you would be shocked at the number of people who speak up about anything. I mean, nobody wants to challenge the status quo, because if you open your mouth and even ask a question, they look at you like, either be quiet or with this, completely quizzical expression like, well, I don't even know why you would be asking me a question, let alone why you would ask me that question. Well, at the end of that presentation, there was a full color handout that was provided that was made of internet posts from Facebook mainly, about what people were saying about the Oklahoma State Election Board. And we were told that we were reminded that we were appointed to this position and we have to be careful about the way we talk about elections. And some of the things that were on the slides that we were shown were ridiculous. It's like I said at the beginning, do not get on social media and say horrible things about people involved in the election board. How is that going to help anything? Just talk about facts, talk about your observations, talk about that kind of thing, but do not threaten people. That's not helpful. Stop, don't do that. So anyway, we were shown this whole thing. And I said at the end of that, I looked to the person who was the deputy secretary of the Oklahoma State Election Board. And I said, well, have you ever thought about the fact that maybe if people feel like they're not getting information from you, it might make them feel defensive and feel like they need to say things? Maybe you could stop that just by being more transparent.
My cat. Yes. I was
Just
given
a thought.
recently slides from that presentation. And while I am a First Amendment absolutist where people can do whatever they want, they are also responsible for what they put out there. So you really have to think about what you put on social media. I was interested to see that one slide from my presentation made it into that presentation, mischaracterized a little bit I put that slide in my presentation as just I find this really interesting. This is an interesting coincidence. My brother was a firefighter for 20 years, and I just find some things kind of fascinating that I wonder if there might be a connection. That would be really strange. So while I do that in my presentation, that was the one slide. I have a presentation that would run about an hour with all of the data that we have. I shortened it to 30 minutes now. And none of that made it in this presentation. That one little slide that I put in there where I question odd fires, that happen, made it into that presentation. So it's very interesting. I would suggest that people always try to talk to people about things and try to be respectful in everything that they do. It is difficult sometimes to get through the noise of social media and to try to determine, who to follow and who to listen to and what have you. But we always try to stay above board. I have actually, though, called on a couple of people to resign on social media, but that is because of the issues that have come up. And I feel like if you can't do your job as an elected official or a public official, that maybe resigning might be your best course of action. If what you're doing doesn't serve the public interests. So I believe everybody has a right to do that. We all vote and we all have that say as citizens. But other than that, I post my data and other things that I find as well. But I know what you're saying. And it's very concerning when that is what's coming out instead of the concerns that are being raised.
Yeah, I was just shocked. I thought this isn't even part of the training. This is, like you said, these people have a First Amendment right, but one of them was, I thought was beyond the pale. It was something like, making an Epstein joke about, well, maybe he should off himself. It was just completely beyond the pale. You don't threaten people or that's just not okay.
It's
But
like
then
playground stuff from the schools. The
it
kids do
is,
it all the time. It's ridiculous.
yeah,
Yes.
and it's just
Yeah.
not okay. And we're all adults and we can talk rationally. But on the other side, if you make observations,
Mhm.
you submit them as a public complaint. And then you do, I did get something back. Absolutely I did, a 2.5-page letter. But if the whole tone and everything is, well, you're wrong, basically, then I don't know how, then they're putting themselves in a really difficult position. Because if you can't be found as and you said it, an appointed official, if you can't be found as an appointed official to carry out your duty, understanding that you work for the people in Oklahoma, then I agree. Then you need to move on to a different job, because that's basically public service, and apparently public service isn't your deal, But we've got to have people who are willing to say, you know what, there might be something there. Hey, let's sit down and talk about it, or let's look at it, instead of just doing this. Nope.
Right. It becomes difficult to you can't have a conversation with
In the
that.
way.
Yeah, you can't. You're not getting your questions addressed at all. And that person should be obligated, definitely, and held accountable when they do not answer those questions. And your concerns, what you got is what I hear, what people get a lot. I still do believe that there is time for the officials to do things, to start addressing questions, to start talking to people when they call, try to be more open and get information and get people into that site that actually can answer questions, because they're only going to get more questions, not less, as things keep continuing further. And as people keep finding out when they call and this is the response they get, then there's just going to be more complaints. So my whole thing is just trying to get the questions answered that we have regarding the data on what's going on with the elections in Oklahoma. Why are we taking Help America Vote Act money against the Constitution? What was that process like? It's not okay to go against the Constitution. There was actually a Supreme Court decision this summer that came out and basically said the state legislatures, while they are writing statutes, the federal government, despite the elections clause, cannot ask the state legislatures to ignore their state constitutions when writing that legislation. The state constitution must be considered. You cannot violate it. So the federal government cannot compel the state legislature to violate their own state constitutions.
And you said in order to get the HAVA money, the Constitution had to be changed, correct?
Yes, because free means unfettered. We can't have any interference in our elections, and taking federal money is interference in our elections.
And we haven't changed it since we've been taking that money.
We have not changed the Constitution's language or changed the Constitution to allow it. That would have to be done as a constitutional amendment. In my opinion, I'm not a lawyer, but a plain reading of the Constitution would dictate that would be a problem that needs to be addressed.
Yeah. Well, I think that goes to that larger issue. I mean, we shouldn't have to be lawyers to basically look at and read and interpret the Oklahoma Constitution the way that it is. And then, when you look at the wider picture, I mean, this is where all that dark money, this is where all that corruption comes in, because the good people that would ask the questions, the good people that would respond to their constituents and to, their representatives, I mean, the people that put them in office, they're not getting voted in. It's these establishment people that are put in with dark money. They're there for a reason. They're not going to subside. They're going to treat us just like the little people that they think we are. It's all big. It's all wrapped into one thing together.
Here's the thing, Michael. I've been told by someone recently, and he's absolutely correct. Do not lower yourself to call yourself a taxpayer, because you're not. You are one of the people that wrote the Constitution. And when you speak to your elected officials, you should come from that position that you are, you're one of the people up here, created the Constitution, which created the branches of government. You're not down here at the bottom. You're up here at the top. And so you have every right to ask questions and to talk to your officials and say, this is definitely not okay. And does anything that goes against the Constitution actually needs to be looked at? So I know that we have a committee in the legislature that's looking into making sure that rules do not violate statutes. But I think we need a committee that looks at the statutes in Oklahoma to make sure they don't violate the Constitution and try to reconcile these things, because it's going to be an issue moving forward, especially when we can't get officials to even answer questions or be, quite frankly, to be honest with you, Jenny, it's a matter of respect. You've got to respect the people that you serve, and you do serve and you do take an oath. And it's been a concern, and it doesn't help when you get things like you got with kind of an attitude or whatever, or you get that whole, well, I don't have to talk to you, but that's not correct. So
or argue. I mean, instead of trying to find that's the other problem that I've had, because I've had phone conversations too, where it's just an argument, and I'm like, but you don't need to argue with me. See, I pay your salary. So at this point, you need to be sitting down and explaining to me, not arguing. with
and that
me.
is coming as one of the, yes, that's coming as one of the people. Explain to me, show me where you get the authority to do X, Y, or Z in the Constitution, because that is the bottom line. The Constitution is the supreme law of the land. The U.S. Constitution, the Oklahoma State Constitution, is the supreme law of the state of Oklahoma. And according to the supreme law of the land, the supreme law of Oklahoma cannot be ignored, nor can it be violated when writing statutes regarding our elections. They cannot use the federal elections clause in order to do that, according to the Supreme Court.
And I think it's important to just reiterate, let's bring it back down to the Oklahoma County elections.
Yes.
And you said it perfectly. You've got a set of rules that are dictating how we have access to information, how the whole process works, written by someone that's appointed, that's not even elected. And that's where that whole problem comes in, is the accountability has been removed from the elected people. Now the rules written by someone override our constitutional rights and our state constitutional rights. And it's unbelievable. But people don't know that. When people have no idea that you've got a set of rules that are really governing at the lowest level, what's happening.
Right. It's called the administrative state. And it can only overrule if people allow it and allow it to continue. So,
and let me double down on that too, because one of the complaints that I had at the Oklahoma County Election Board was that all of the absentee ballots were being counted in another room away from the public. But the public, and when I say public, I mean the Oklahoma County Election Board. So Cheryl and David Glover, who is the Democrat who sits on the board with Secretary Sanderson, Doug Sanderson, that is the Oklahoma County Election Board, those three people. I'm just an alternate for Cheryl in case she can't be there, right? So I go, so I know what's going on. So when I went, I was shocked to see that the actual election board, all they do with the absentee ballots to touch them or manipulate them at all is just to check and make sure that the notary is correct, that the affidavit on the envelope is correct, right? They don't see the counting of those. They don't see any of that because it's on a TV screen on closed circuit television. And my complaint was, according to the rules that govern the Oklahoma County election boards, that also is echoed in state law, it says that the Oklahoma County Election Board should be available to see that counting. They should be in the room essentially where that counting is happening. Well, when I questioned that, I was told that the DA had come in and said that the closed circuit television setup for the absentee ballots was acceptable. And then my question became, well, I thought the DA, the district attorney, was his or her function was to enforce law, not to find a way around the law as it's written. And then nothing, I never got, that's never been addressed, right? So that's another thing that's a concern. I think when people don't understand the way the system works, they don't know the questions to ask. Yeah. They can't really see the problems, which is why somebody like you, Wendi, is so important, because you say, look, you need to check for this, you need to check for that, you need to check for this, because people literally don't know what to do. And it's not even their fault. It's like, you would have to spend how many hours a day do you work on this, Wendi, to know what to do?
Right. It's public education on the issue around voting. There are people, of course, that see the issues and they want to know what to do. And, right now what they can do basically is complain to your legislature, but you have to know what to complain about, correct? So having people check their voter portal like you just did, and you see how wide open that is, that's a concern. So start calling your representatives about that.
Hold on, I'm going to make a list in the comments. Comments. Okay. check your, well, I mean, let's help people.
You have to, yeah. We have a website, oakland.org, that has a little bit of this on it. We do. I'm the principal co-founder of Oklahoma Liberty and Integrity Group, which is where I started, but now I'm the state director for Restore Liberty in Oklahoma. And so these concerns with the elections are addressed on oakland.org. Okay, lig.org.
Hold on.
Sure.
I'm trying to make this so it's understandable. Okay. Don't do that. Okay. Now tell me, go.
Oakland.org.
Okay.
lig.org. Yeah.
Okay.
There should be a link to the voter portal in the election toolkit. If people get into that, that is the most basic thing that you can do, is check your voter history. If there is anything wrong with it, if you don't like what you see, if you see a bunch of asterisks and you want to know that your vote was actually counted as you cast it in the manner that you cast it, you don't have to ever tell anyone who you voted for. You just look at the manner and say, okay, I know I went in and voted in this election. I voted absentee in this election. Okay, so if things don't jive or if there's any problems, contact the state election board. Contact your legislature. Let them know what kind of response you get. Thank you. That is the word. There's also articles on there that we've written. There were several pieces of legislation in 2022 that were dropped in Oklahoma regarding election integrity. None of them even came out of committee that would have addressed the issues that we've talked about. There was an issue by my representative, a bill that she sponsored that got passed, which means Oklahoma keeps paper ballots. That's Nicole Miller's bill. But other than that, there really wasn't much that came out, and especially nothing that we really needed. Sean Roberts dropped 3677, which would have re-registered all Oklahomans by now, and it didn't even come out of committee. So that is being reintroduced. That is Representative Stewart. I found it. It is Senate Bill 1659. So Senate Bill 1659, that is to re-register Oklahomans. We need that.
1659.
Well, and Wendi, what is the opposition against just clearing the rolls and re-registering? I mean, why is that so difficult? What's the hurdle?
Apparently, when Secretary Ziriak did go down when it was heard in committee in 2022 and told the committee it would cost $1 million to re-register Oklahomans. That was his main concern with it that he brought up, was the cost. But he would have to hire, this would require more employees for the state election board. This will require quite a bit. So I don't know where he got the money. He didn't itemize that for anyone. He just said it would cost a lot of money. He didn't want it. And so it came out. Sean had something about poll workers also in that bill. They removed the re-registration language and kept the poll worker provision, but it was dead in the committee. So it passed that way, but I don't think it ever made it to the floor of the House. It is in that whatever happened to the legislation in 2022, that article basically follows every single piece of legislation we were watching, and it gives the fate of all of them. If you can't access it, let me know. All of these are also available on Restore Liberty Oklahoma's Substack account. So
what is that?
That is, let me give you the URL for that really quickly.
It's like phone numbers. We don't remember these things.
I know that. Well, it's long, right? I mean, it's an HTTPS, // um, let me get on here really quick and I will give you the URL because it'll open up in my browser. But, there are let me get in the link because it asked me to share it and I can share the link here.
Okay, then hold on. Let me
Technology
get on.
for us old folks, is not always the funnest. But we're learning, right? We're learning a lot, and it is open Substack. Here we go. Now it won't let me read it. That's funny. Okay, it's https://
Right.
restorelibetyoklahoma.substack.com.
Okay, well, that wasn't hard. Okay, so I'm going to share this just so people
I would have tried to have put Substack first.
See it.
It's always good to double check myself.
All right, and I'm going to put that in the chat. All right. All right, and I will, when I go back to edit this today, I will go back and pull out some of those things so that, people actually have them to be able to follow. But I mean, honestly, from what we've been talking about today, because it's about time for us to wind up, I think I was when you said just a second ago about Secretary Ziriak said, well, it will cost $1 million. So when you think about it, hopefully, if you're a good consumer, if you need a new oven, get it? Because I have mine broken. So you need, let's say you need a new oven. There are two ways to go with that, right? You can actually look them up and you can pick the cheapest one, right? Because, I'm cheap. I just am going to pick the cheapest one, right? Or you can do your due diligence, find out which ones have the best reviews, and then go ahead and purchase that one, even though it may be more expensive, thinking that, the thought process is that, you may have to spend a little bit more, but you're getting something better. You're getting a better product, right? So I guess this is kind of analogous to what I see going on here. So Secretary Ziriak says that'll cost us $1 million. Okay. So we either spend the $1 million and have a really great product, which is essential to our liberty, or we continue limping along with something else that is still essential to our liberty, but we don't know if it's functioning properly at all. And we don't have anybody willing to look into whether it is or not. I mean, does that kind of seem right?
Right. That's my whole thing. The cost of that for me, making sure that my vote is counted as I cast it and can't be manipulated. There are other issues with the elections, issues that have come up regarding the machines, including ours, that need to be looked into, which once again, I always talk about bringing everything off of electronics and going old school. A fifth grader, we have made elections so complicated, and it's a simple process that any fifth grader, are you smarter than a fifth grader? A fifth grader can make up a process to count votes, right? So if we, confuse the process, decomplicate it, go back to basics, and have people actually hand count ballots and paper ballots and get rid of these machines, get rid of the expense. It's actually more expensive to maintain the machines, and do various things to shore up our elections and make sure that the process is transparent. People should not be watching vote counting going on behind a TV screen. Definitely that actually violates the statute.
It does.
So we have statutes being violated and other officials saying that's okay. I'm not okay with that. I don't know what I would need to know the rationale behind it, though. I don't want to pass judgment on anyone doing anything. They may have their reasons, but the issues become simplifying things for the priceless, because our vote is priceless. It is something, it is how the foundation of our republic, it is our voice in our governance. And people have issues these days sometimes with how they are being governed. And they have issues they want to bring up to their city officials, to their mayors at the local level, even their school boards. And Michael ran for school board. So we have to make sure that the people who are sitting there with the consent of the governed. What does the Declaration of Independence say? The consent of the governed is the legitimacy of your government. So the vote, the elections are the basic foundation. And to me, making sure that those are secure for the public. I don't care if you want to write in Mickey Mouse to vote for president on your ballot. You should be able to do that as far as I'm concerned. But that should be counted as you cast it. I literally do not care. For me, the elections are a nonpartisan issue, and it's the basic inherent God-given right of everyone to vote for their representative in a republic such as ours. This is not a democracy, no matter how people want to, say that. We don't have tyranny of the majority. It is a representative republic. And in order to, maintain that, we are guaranteed a Republican form of governance by the U.S. Supreme Court in every state. So in order to make sure that's happening, we have to have the transparency. We have to have people engaged. We have to have them looking into the process and talking to their legislators actively about any issues that they have. You brought up the notary stamp. I noticed April 3rd when I went in, nobody was counting to make sure each notary had only stamped 20 ballots, which is the statute. So we have multiple issues with the way the absentee ballots are being run. Yeah. So multiple questions. It doesn't mean anything's being done necessarily wrong. It needs to be looked into instead of dismissed. And that's been a lot of the problem so far, is just having things dismissed. And looking into things and shedding light on things can do nothing but good for everyone, and making sure things are done appropriately. But the re-registering of Oklahomans, it was a cost issue that was brought up. I believe we have a surplus in the government right now. So if people really want to spend a little bit of that money to help make sure our voter rolls are cleaned up, as soon as they're cleaned up, a lot of the issues that we're looking at may be able to go away, because dirty voter rolls are a problem across the United States. And I say dirty, but it's bloated, and there are all kinds of malfeasance that can happen with these rolls. We don't even have to prove it has happened. The fact that it can happen, is enough to concern me.
Well, what you said a minute ago about, and what you were talking about counting by hand. Here's the thing that just kills me. When I was a kid, you had to in-person vote. You had to in-person sign up. You had to sign, put the card in and mail it in. I mean, you had to do, all of these things. And yet suddenly we can't do those anymore. How does that happen? How does that happen? What
convenience?
Yeah. I mean, and that's actually what it is. It just boils down to the republic is the republic is definitely going to go away because of apathy. I mean, we're at the point where Rome was. We'll give them bread and circuses, and just doesn't matter what we're doing. Yuck, yuck, yuck. Just make sure that the Christians are being eaten by the lions, and that's providing enough entertainment to keep them from worrying about the fact that Rome's out of money and under a horrible leadership. So, I mean, it's not as though we're not having the same issues today. It's not like history doesn't repeat itself. And the only way out of that, the only way, I mean, well, I guess there are two ways. I mean, it all crashes and burns, and then you have to build it back up. That it would be preferable for our kids, all of us have kids, that it not happen that way, and that people pull their heads out of their phones and out of their televisions and pay attention to what's going on and actively make sure that their liberty is being protected. But you have to actively do it.
Yes, it's our duty as citizens. And what did Benjamin Franklin say? We've given you a Republican, ma'am, if you can keep it. Yeah. And that's on my my cards for Restore Liberty. That is our motto, a republic if you can keep it. So people have to actively become engaged in their community again, and in their, teach your kids civics. If you don't think they're learning it in public schools, teach them civics, have people come in and talk to them.
What? They might not learn civics in public school?
They might not learn civics in public schools, not the way they should. There's a very, a small thing, and half the time I think it's even not even required. There's a little bit, I think, that's required.
There is a little bit,
but just a little bit, but that's not enough. I remember having civics from the time, kindergarten. You learned all the patriotic songs, right? So that now I think when kids hear a patriotic song, they may not even know the words. That's kind of foreign to me. You have your man out on the street interviews where people go out and say, what do you know about American history? People coming in to become naturalized citizens who have to take the citizens test know more than people that were born here. That's concerning.
It's true.
So we have to get back to civics and public education and really make sure that kids see their parents and their grandparents getting involved and engaged. And while we have noticed with the issues with COVID, with the schools, people are starting to engage their school boards, but we need people as well to engage their city councils, to engage their state legislators, and go up there. I mean, I had never been to the Capitol before 2020. So now I've been up there several times, and I talked to my representative and others and talked to them about elections. And I'm getting ready to go to a rally up there again, I think February 10th. There's going to be a medical freedom rally. So there are things that we can do. Your legislatures actually, from what I've seen, they want to talk to their constituents. So they want you calling. They want you engaged. They want guidance to know what their constituents are thinking. And when we don't do that, they don't have that. And so sometimes, instead of being influenced by the people they represent, they're being influenced by other people. So you have to, they may not necessarily like that way of doing things either. So just talk to and be engaged. Oklahoma County is very populous where we live, but it doesn't mean that your representative doesn't want to know you, doesn't want to hear from you. You're not going to get lost in the crowd up there, because there is no crowd up there. I have found.
True.
They say if they get a phone call, 10 phone calls on a piece of legislation, that's a big deal to them. And that's a sad state of the way we've been handling ourselves. And Jenny, you gave your age. I'm 55. I feel very, guilty over how my being distracted over all these years, even just raising kids. I mean, we all have to make time, and we do have a lot of engaged parents, a lot of engaged moms, always have, in the schools and the issues with teachers in schools, but there are other things we have to pay attention to. And elections are one of them. As the foundation of the republic, you want to make sure that things are secure there so that you can build from there, and things are functioning the way they should. But like you said, Rome did not survive. If we don't get engaged, we may not survive. So we need to
go in the same way.
Yeah, we need
Well,
to.
Wendi, thank you so much for being on with us today. I mean, what you have said, I mean, it has been wonderful, and I can't wait for this to go up and have other people, those of you who are watching now, make sure you share this video, please. And I do want to follow up with one thing. Again, there's no reason to be ugly to your election officials. There's not.
Right.
So, and
Right.
I certainly don't want to be ugly to our elected officials. But on the other hand, our election officials also need to be willing to be accountable and transparent and forthcoming when we ask questions, which it is our right to do as citizens. It's not your right, it is your right to be able to say, what you want to a reasonable degree on social media. But think about what's helpful. Think about what's helpful, and let's get these problems solved. And Wendi, would you be interested in coming on kind of regularly and updating us, especially when there's legislation out there? Because I know that we would love to be able to help you make sure that these bills are getting, like the one with Senator Stewart. It needs to at least have a hearing. I mean, for Pete's sakes.
Yes, and absolutely, I would be more than willing to come on and do that. And I just want to state for the record, so that people know, nothing that's going on in Oklahoma, our officials don't even, I can work out scenarios where they don't even have to know what's going on. And that's the scary part about it too, with everything being online. Nobody in Oklahoma has to know anything about what's going on. So if you go to your county election board and they tell you that they're not sure, that's a very, that could be a very valid standpoint for them as well. I would say they should be a little more curious as well, but be nice to people when you go in and talk to them, because as I said, they may not know what's going on either, and they can be just as concerned as we are. And if you go in and you're butting heads from the get-go, you may not get as far as you would otherwise. So, you don't want to create that situation where people do not want to talk to you either. So just be kind to your officials. They're appointed as well. So one of my goals is to get everyone elected that is working on our elections. So that's a big goal. And I think it's about time that happens in Oklahoma.
Yeah. Well, Wendi, thank you again. We will hopefully be talking to you again soon, but thank you so much for coming on today. It's been a pleasure to have you, and we'll just keep, after the show's over, we'll get together and put some dates together that you can come back on to provide us updates, because don't forget, the legislative session starts on February 5th. So, and there are election board meetings as well that you can find out from going to the Oklahoma County Election Board, to your Oklahoma County Election Board, and you can find out when your elections are, and you have the right as a citizen to be present during those meetings, during those elections. So don't forget about that either. All right, Wendi, thank you so much. If you'll hang on just a second after we get off here, and we'll put some dates on the calendar if you can.
Thank you, Jenny and Michael. It's been an honor and a pleasure to speak with you today. And I look forward to coming back and returning and talking about keeping track of the legislation. Yes, we do need to do that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks.
All right. Bye. Well, Michael, that was quite an eye-opening segment. I really appreciate, what Wendi has to say. And I think the thing that we need to stress as we're closing off today, was Wendi rude or ugly?
No.
She didn't seem rude or ugly to me.
Yeah, she's pretty scary, actually.
Yeah. So, well, I think if people who in the election system in Oklahoma don't want to address her questions, or even mine, I mean, I think I think they should understand that that's what causes backlash.
Yeah.
So just, putting your hand up and saying, no, or saying, well, that's not the way it's going, or this is what, blah, blah, blah. And, I mean, there's an attitude of, and I don't want to call it submission. I mean, you don't have to be submissive, but there's an attitude that anybody in customer service should have. I mean, isn't the saying the customer's always right? I'm not saying that we're always right, or that I am, or that Wendi, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that we need to make sure that elected officials and appointed officials, people who are paid on tax dollars, with tax dollars, are able to communicate appropriately, fairly, kindly with the people that they govern, if you will, oversee, however you want to say that, so that we can work together. And there's a together working, not just a, well, this is the way it is, and because I said so.
Yeah, but to me, it goes all back into education. It goes back into school. It goes back into how these kids, they're not taught anything about the Republic. They're not taught. They have no idea what the Constitution really is, our rights really are, how the government is there to protect our liberty, not just to run rampant and rule us the way that it all goes back to education one way or another. So we've got to change that wheel first. And I also want to give Wendi just a ton of admiration, respect, and just
props.
Yeah, just show and tell people, hey, here's a mom, here's a professional, here's someone that just took it upon herself to start asking some questions. Not to just be blindsided by reality TV and everything that's going on your phone. She just said, hey, I have some questions. So she just started looking and going deeper and deeper. And now look at what all she's produced. She probably, rewind 10 years ago, she probably never saw herself in a situation like this, uncovering, even having to think about the integrity around that was never an issue before in her life. And here she took it upon herself to ask these questions. And now she's becoming an expert in the Oklahoma space of what, and it's literally just because she just started saying, hey, is this really working the way that it's supposed to work according to the Constitution, which is the law of the land? I mean, ultimately that's, I just want to thank Wendi for that, and let other people know, maybe inspire other people that they can do what Wendi's doing also. And they should ask questions. They should do this stuff.
Yeah, and there's a difference between accusing and asking questions.
Yeah.
And again, I mean, I have to keep going back to it just because of what's been my experience. I mean, there's nothing wrong with asking a question. And if it irritates you to get a question, you're probably not in the right job. I mean, I'm sorry. I don't know what to say about that. But, if you work, for a department store, and then when somebody comes up to you and says, can I find out where the men's slacks are? And you go, I'm not telling you, you don't need to know. Well, I mean, you can look around for yourself. I mean, nobody's you get fired.
Yeah. Well, so, to just make it relative, you're going to buy a car without asking questions. Are you going to make an investment in something without asking any questions? Are you going to buy a house without asking any questions? I mean, come on, that's the American way, but we just seem to not do that when it comes to these types of issues and things. And, we need to.
And I think I remember kind of when I started out, I remember it was really hard for me because I was scared, literally, of saying something wrong or like offending somebody or, getting in trouble. I mean, there's always that, getting in trouble.
Yeah.
And I think the thing of it is that you just have to swallow that, you just have to swallow that and say, you know what? I may not know the answer, but that's why I'm asking this question. So it's okay for me to ask that question. I'm not going to get in trouble. I should not get in trouble for asking questions. and I should be expected to be dealt with respectfully. And so don't feel fear. I mean, and I hate to say that, because look what happened on January 6th.
Yeah.
I mean, they did that specifically to strike fear in the peasants and keep them from asking questions and keep them from doing things, because, you know, the government will just take you and put you in jail. So, I mean, it is hard at this point in time to be able to tell people, you know, stick up for yourself, ask questions. But again, if we let them scare us into submission, we're submitted.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
and we're
submission
almost,
is the opposite of liberty.
yeah. And we've been conditioned into that. That's why we're in the condition, you know, in the position that we're in, is so many people have just taken that easier route to just say, oh, you know, they can do it. They're the government, you know, whatever. I don't want to be like that. I want to be self-sufficient. I don't want to have to depend on the government or anyone for anything.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, do you have anything I was going to mention about upcoming shows? Because we've got another show that's coming up on election integrity on the 31st. So I think it's the 31st. Oh, I'm looking in February.
Yeah.
It might be good to get the right.
Yeah, we've got Carmen on Friday, and then we've got Amber.
Yes, Amber Evans, who Wendi just mentioned earlier. So we have Amber coming on the 31st, and she's going to talk about kind of a similar thing to Wendi, but kind of expanding on voter rolls and looking at voter rolls and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so she'll be doing that. So I think we've got a great week, and then we're all booked up for February, and we can talk about that another time, or I can post that on the newsletter. If you haven't signed up on the newsletter, be sure to go to our website, rope2.org, and you can sign up for our newsletter. I try to get it out once a week, and it will have the recaps of all of our videos on it and who's going to be on the show the upcoming week, as well as some news. So please feel free to, and please do so. Please sign up for the newsletter. Also, thank you to everybody who does support us, our Patreon subscribers, people who have just gone to our website and donated to our efforts. It's not cheap. I mean, I think just StreamYard, isn't it something like $400 a month? Or I mean, $400 a month, $400 a year. And then you get WordPress, which is our, you know, and that's like $400 a year. So, I mean, it's not cheap to do this. And, you know, we've used our own pocketbooks for a long time, but it's always nice if we don't have to, at least according to my husband. So, thank you for donating, and thank you if you do. And anything else, Michael?
No. Sorry, I think it's important to remember this is not a democracy, and that's kind of the place that we are in right now. We're ruled by, you know, just a small amount of people, you know, is ruling us, and we've got to remember, just like Wendi said with the quote from Benjamin Franklin, it's a republic, you know, it's ours, you know, if we can keep it. And I think people forget, just, you know, we are a republic.
3 branches of government.
Yeah. And the government's there to protect our liberty. I mean, I can't say that enough. You say it all the time. They're not there to feed our kids. They're not there to educate us. They're not there to write laws. The government's not there to write laws. They're there to protect our liberty.
That's right. And sometimes that means repealing laws.
Yeah.
Sometimes that means not writing laws. Sometimes that just means performing investigations and getting to the bottom of things, you know, that will help ensure our liberty. So absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Michael, it's a pleasure as always. I'm looking forward to seeing you and Carmen on Friday. And I hope everybody's watching again, 9 a.m. On Friday morning, and we're live. You can always ask questions in the chats while you're live. So thanks for being with us, and we'll see you again on Friday.
All right.